Bills Mafia, what's going on? Tonight, we are going to talk about this wild week, Ken Dorsey leaving, is McDermott on the way out, and the upcoming Jets matchup. Let's get it. Bills Mafia, what's going on? Happy Friday. Good evening. Happy Friday. Happy Thursday. I don't even know what day of the week. This has been a very weird week for me. Half my household is sick again. That's what happens when you have a child in daycare. God, it's been brutal. But, guys, we are in Jets week. Welcome in. Welcome to Buffalo Late Night here on the Cover One Sports Network. There's a lot to talk about, man. We were off last week. Again, it's been a rough week. Anybody that has kids knows it's like you can't get away from the sickness bug when you got little ones. I got a 9.5-month-old son, and I swear every other day he's bringing something home for us. It's like Halloween, but not the fun way. But guys, we do have a fun show tonight for you. I am your host, Thomas DeLoss. Again, I am glad you've chosen to hang out with us this evening. Thank you for tuning in. Or if you're listening on Spotify, happy Friday to you. It's actually Friday tomorrow. You guys can find our show free on all social media and streaming platforms, including Spotify and YouTube, or however you choose to pod. If you are watching on Twitter right now, hop on over. Come join us here on YouTube. You can see the tweet both on the Cover One page and on my page. Click that, join us, join the conversation. It's a lot more fun in here. Also, want to make sure you're hitting that subscribe button on our YouTube page and the notification button as well. It'll let you know every single time one of our Cover One shows has gone live. Super chats are open, so if you got something to say, if you want to yell at me, hit that super chat button and fire away. Guys, we are in Jets week. It's a big week. God, I never thought I'd say in this moment that this week is as big as it really is. But man, it's a big week. So make sure you are subscribed to Cover One, as well as all the Cover One stuff. Cover One Pass for all the best coverage and analysis heading into the 2023 season. Guys, I do want to apologize for no show last week. As I said, I was sick. I was dealing with a bunch of stuff. I'm like really twisted up on my words. But I'm glad to be back. Tonight we do have a fantastic show. We have two great people, two of my buddies on here with us tonight. First, we have one of the hosts of the Going Deep podcast, Mr. Kevin Masseri, and the creator of Buffalo on the Brain, one half of the Goodberry brothers, Mr. Glenn Goodberry. Fellas, what's going on?
Oh,
living the dream, Thomas.
Yeah.
Love being here. Glad to be back with you on Buffalo Late Night. It's always a fun experience.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to live, laugh, love, and talk Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a interesting topic. Obviously it's something that we'll definitely get into, but let's go right off the top, guys. Let's talk about the most recent news that has come out of Buffalo, the real hot button topic. Stefon Diggs is still happy to be in Buffalo. Obviously, that was another interesting conversation. Stefon Diggs had a press conference today. Well, not press conference, just a media scrum, and spoke to the media about what's going on. Guys, what are your thoughts on everything Stefon Diggs right now, how he handled today, and kind of going forward?
I think this is Stefon Diggs's mojo, kind of. It's how he acts. He's a lot happier than sometimes it seems, or that it perceives to be. And there's just generally a consensus that he's angry. He's mad at everybody. He wants to leave. He wants to be traded. His money's not good. Like, just whatever the case may be. And usually they're all false He doesn't do a great job of putting any of those out a lot of times. But he basically, it is what it is. His contract has me at $31 million. He's not going anywhere guaranteed. So there's no way someone would have to come with buku compensation to ever pry him away. And at his age, I just wouldn't see a team come in with what type of compensation the Bills would want for that type of salary reduction. And basically a team acquiring him wouldn't have to pay him an extraordinarily amount either. So there's no way that the sides would even match in a world where you think there's any problems. I think he's happy. I think it's one of those situations where he plays it out. Similar to like Mike Evans. You talked about Mike Evans being traded for 2 years now. And he stayed on even a worse Buccaneers team, in my opinion. So for me, I think he's happy. It's cool to see. He always handles himself extremely well in the media and is just downright usually a really great interview. So it's great to see.
Glenn, what are your thoughts on Stefon Diggs? Oh, we might have him frozen. What I will say is this, for all the naysayers about Stefon Diggs, and you know what, every player, they're not going to be your cup of tea. The way they handle things, the way they are in the media is not going to be everybody's favorite. And that's fine. It really is. I mean, you can look down the line. Terrell Owens was not everybody's favorite. Was he as talented as almost any receiver ever? Absolutely. Was he definitely kind of an odd bird? Sure. Stefon Diggs is a guy that kind of goes by the beat of his own drum, but for whatever his brother wants to say is irrelevant. Like Kev said, there's no way they're going to get him out of Buffalo, for one, because he's Josh Allen's number one target. He is in the top 3 of all wide receivers and all qualifying receiving targets for targets in the NFL. And on top of that, Stefon Diggs is having his best year as a professional receiver. He is on pace to break not only his own record that broke the Buffalo Bills single season receiving yards record, the same thing for receptions and for touchdowns. Stefon Diggs is having a marquee banner year where, yes, the production in terms of how their record looks is not, the two ends aren't meeting, but don't get it twisted. Stefon Diggs damn well knows that, yes, he could go somewhere else, but the chances that he's going to be satiated or happy to the way that he is here is probably slim. So, Glenn, what are your thoughts on the whole, nonsense regarding Stefon Diggs as per usual?
Yeah, I apologize there. I had a quick connection issue, but
no worries.
I think there's a lot of avenues there. We know Diggs is a complex sort of personality as it is, and him and his brother, which I'm familiar with in some sense of, they've got a brand, right? They've sort of got this thing with each other. They've got this little bit of, this tension that makes Bills fans insecure that they want to play with each other, which is probably just a normal brotherly sort of thing. But like you alluded to, he's very happy here from what it seems. His production numbers are fine. He's getting paid. He's respected here. He's loved here. The NFL media as a whole, though, loves to sort of question him because his personality is a little bit eccentric. It's a little bit different, which wide receivers, that's not necessarily new to that sort of position group. But, I think there's a little bit of smoke there to where, his brothers sort of, maybe they had a conversation or something behind the scenes. And he said, whatever happens with my brother, I'll address. I'm not going to answer that here. But like you said, I think, he wants to win. I think that's he's got everything else except for the winning in sense of a Super Bowl. He's tired of spinning their tires in the playoffs.
Right.
And I think his competitive edge and sort of his eccentric personality sort of brings this out when the spotlights are on. And it doesn't help that the Bills play so many primetime games, nationally televised games, under the lights, big time. And Stefon Diggs is just a polarizing player.
Yeah, absolutely. Side note, and I don't know how I never noticed this. I was a huge Power Rangers fan growing up. So looking behind you, it's like looking at an I Spy book. It's like some of the coolest things I've ever seen. I love it. I probably had a few of those things when I was a kid myself.
Yeah, you're in my nerdseum. It's wall to wall in here. I know you can only see this much, but one day I'll share something, a video or something, and you'll get a whole tour of this place.
Yeah, that's sick. I love it.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, in the situation, it's one of those things. And the reality is, if whether you're a content creator, whether you've got like Buffalo in the brain, or you're whatever avenue you're in,
Yeah,
there's always going to be people that are going to find a way to try to cut you down in whatever avenue that is. They're not going to like how you handle yourself. They're not going to weigh the way you dress or look or whatever it is. Stefon Diggs is incredibly successful. He's very talented. Yes, he's a little bombastic and he's a little bit different. He loves fashion, whatever. Who cares? At the end of the day, Stefon Diggs has found extreme success with a guy that obviously, like we saw today, him and Josh being best friends. He's good. And I'll be honest with you, I loved, whatever, Adam Bonini does a great job, but I love that Stefon Diggs clapped back at him for that, because the reality is, if I was in his position, if I had been asked the same question 16 different ways over the course of 2 years, I think I'd be tired of responding to the same question the same way over and over again. Needless to say, let's carry on. I think it's a nonsense situation. Now, this week, obviously the Buffalo Bills laid off Ken Dorsey, a move that I think seemingly was obvious. I think a lot of people kind of felt the writing was on the wall, whether it was now or whether it was later in the season or at the end of the season. I think everybody kind of knew, unless somehow this miraculous change of event happened, that Dorsey was probably on his way out. What do you guys what are your thoughts on the situation? And also, to kind of handcuff that, what are your thoughts about Joe Brady being the interim OC? Kev, if you want to start.
I think that there needs to be a fall guy for a 5-5 start. They haven't been 500 this late in the season in many, many years. And there needs to be some explanation for the reason that the eye test doesn't match the analytics. There's a lot of explanations right now for why those things are true. 24% of drives are ending in a turnover. There's just so many anomalies. There's Dawson Knox drops early on before he went on IR. You have a Dalton Kincaid fumble in there. You have a Gabe Davis fumble in there. You have a James Cook fumble in there. So at some point, and then you have deflected interceptions, 2 or 3 of them. Right. At some point, that kind of unluckiness, and I hate using that word in this sport, but that kind of unluckiness, it goes away. It stops. So quite frankly, I do believe that you'll see some positive progression in the numbers to show that your eye test will eventually, I'm a firm believer of this. The eye test is going to eventually match what these numbers say. And that's what a lot of the best analytical minds are saying right now. Josh Allen is still top in every EPA category in a majority of how successful last week was on offense. And it just didn't look it. So there eventually those mishaps aren't going to happen. The scripted plays in the beginning of the game, I thought was going to go the way pretty nice. A nice little drive starter, 4 yards to Cook. Shouldn't have bounced into tacklers there. But anyways, I do believe they needed a fall person for like the reason of like, yes, there's some anomalies in this, but like they got to stop, and they haven't. So we're going to have a fall guy, and maybe to make them uncomfortable. But just Brady in general and his interviews is just that much more interesting to listen to. Like, that Dorsey's smart and what he's doing is probably decent. It just never came across that way. And I think that ended up hurting him down the line. So they had to make a move. They're not benching their quarterback. They're not going to sit anybody else in the offense. The offensive line's playing good. That's the move. And the move is more of a public move to me, Thomas. But at the same time, there wasn't any great stacking of their plays. There was some spacing issues. So there was something to be said. But at some point, you can't just keep saying they're unlucky. You need to make a change, even though the data literally points to an anomaly of unluckiness from where they're ending drives, and how many successful chain moves that they have in a game should equal more points. They need to change their special teams too. They're 20 yards worse than a team starting opponent in multiple back-to-back weeks. That's got to change because they have more chains to move. So ultimately, there's some issues. And Dorsey was just a fall guy, in my opinion, in this situation. But it's good. Like, I need to see change. They're 5-5. The funniest thing ever is if they miss that field goal like they did, do you fire him? Also, if Mac Jones doesn't drive down the field for the only time in 35 games since his rookie year, did they fire him? I don't know. It's that thin of a line to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and Kevin hit on a few good points too. I mean, even branching off of the Dorsey firing, where Kevin was going with the what ifs in the past, the decision making of McDermott and the preparedness of situational football there, seemingly at the end of some of these heartbreaking losses we've endured in the McDermott era. But I think, like you said, the Dorsey move, it was a court of public opinion, right? That Dorsey was awkward and he couldn't articulate well in these press conferences. And he, the public didn't necessarily like him. They couldn't understand him. He seemed really weird. And then on top of it, the Bills' offense seemed to sputter. You got the analytics numbers, and you've got your typical normal Bills fan that doesn't necessarily, you've got those two that have butt heads, and even more so over the last few weeks have we seen in the Twitterverse, right? Or X, whatever. But, Dorsey being the fall guy here. And like Kevin alluded to, with the luck has to change. You do sort of see that. And Joe Brady could sort of benefit from that sort of the bad luck running out, and maybe the Bills getting balls bouncing their way and executing a little bit more. And even some of the breakdowns I've watched, even through the Cover One channel, that these concept routes are just basic and they're just odd, and they're kind of like they really leave you a little boggled on what are they doing. You know what I mean? So, I do think it was a fall guy. And they needed a move. They needed a move for the public, for the Bills fan.
Yeah. Here's the big thing about this. And when you look at the stats and how everything looked, the Bills are a team that, like, if you didn't look at their record, you would anticipate they'd be one of the best teams in the league. Like, it doesn't, the two things, like Kev said, the eye test doesn't match up. And so that's where I think a lot of those analytics, the EPA, the DVOA, all those stats, a lot of that stuff is inflated because, well, you've got Josh Allen. And if Ken Dorsey had a quarterback that wasn't as competent and as creative out of the pocket and wasn't able to, really create kind of out of structure, those numbers would not nearly be as good as they look. And I think that's truly part of the situation. But again, then it also falls on Josh Allen, where Josh Allen does some things that inflicted a lot of wounds on Ken Dorsey. It was a marriage that unfortunately was never going to work out because Ken Dorsey didn't elevate the things that Josh Allen should be elevated in. He did not help Josh Allen take his game to the next level. Whereas when you looked at Dable, what Dable was able to do, and I'm not saying Dable had his faults because Dable did. Dable got Josh to a place at the beginning of a game that made him comfortable. Easy layup passes, getting him into rhythm, throws that he knew he could go to. Dable had like a book of like 7 to 10 different routes that he knew Josh could go to, and it would get him going. And that would get the game moving in the right direction and get the offense in tempo. That never happened. It almost felt like, and we saw this out of how many games over the last how many weeks of the last 2 years, it felt like the start of a game for the Bills was clunky. It made no sense when that's supposed to be your best part of your game. Your scripted part of your game is supposed to be the smoothest because, well, it's scripted. You know what's coming. You have everything lined up for yourself, and you are in the best possible situation to be successful. There was just a lot of stuff with Dorsey. It just didn't make sense. It was a lot of stuff that was kind of counterintuitive to the Bills' succession. You saw times that he would run plays that in the moment just didn't seem like it would have been, in terms of being successful, the best possible option. You saw when they were on the 1 yard line, they'd have Latavius Murray in shotgun running the ball up the gut. It worked or it didn't work. And the crazy thing is they just kept doing it. And how many times did we see a delayed handoff to James Cook out of shotgun? Just stuff like that wasn't complimentary to this offense. But I think what you're going to see from Joe Brady, which is, from what I've heard on all accounts, what we saw at today's press conference, is a guy that has confidence. And I think that just alone is going to help this team. I think Sal Capaccio, and I don't know if you guys listen to WGR. I don't listen to a lot of it, to be honest with you, and I'm not going to throw any shots at them, but I will say this. Sal Capaccio mentioned something that I thought was intriguing. and I'd never heard anybody talk about it, but I thought it was intriguing in the sense that Dorsey's attitude or his personality of being kind of an introvert may have played a role in the way that the Bills were playing. That low positive that Josh had, the way that the Bills were, they didn't seem to have that fire. Josh didn't seem to have that machismo that he was kind of feeding off of Dorsey, and how Dorsey was just kind of, I don't know, I don't want to like say nerdy because nothing's wrong with that, but just very much kind of like to himself. Whereas, when you look at Joe Brady, he exudes confidence. He comes from the Sean Payton tree. And the one thing I will say, if you like Sean Payton, remember Chan Gailey, because Chan Gailey's offense back when he was with the Bills with a terrible offensive structure is very, very similar to what Sean Payton does. A very spread style offense, which is going to work to Josh Allen and being able to create on the fly. But let's get beyond this. We obviously know this is over. Let's talk about the big topic today, which is what I mentioned, Sean McDermott. I got to mute myself. So, Kevin, I'm going to have you start off. What are your thoughts on Sean McDermott and the prevailing opinion that he should be fired?
It's a tough topic right now in a lot of different ways. And I don't even know where to go with it, because I think it's a lose-lose in a lot of cases in this discussion, unless you're rabble, fire him, rabble at the current moment. However, I think it's more nuanced than that. He has multiple years remaining at $8 million per. If you think that in the midst of needing to get PSLs, that they're going to fire the coach and pay him $32 million in a buyout, plus whatever a new coach is, presumably not someone low end. I don't know. I don't necessarily know over 4-year contract to the next coach. I don't necessarily know that you're going to want 70 million, 60 million eaten up there while a stadium's being built where you're going to ask the public to pay you PSLs. I don't necessarily see that as a plausible experience right now outside of a catastrophic don't win any more games. And the way that the eye test is going, maybe they lose out, but the way that I feel that the data is going to go is that I think you're going to see a positive progression to the mean, and you're going to see some wins and maybe steal one from an Eagles team, a Chiefs team, whatever, that kind of swaps with some of those losses. So we'll see if that actually happens. But if you're clawing for a playoff spot, I just don't see a world. Now, if it gets bad, it is what it is. And just like Dorsey, you're going to have to talk about it. But with that money situation to it, I don't see how. And what they're getting out of this defense with, I mean, you're missing everybody. At some points throughout the last couple of weeks, you're talking about, a defense that you've got a guy that you traded for. You have some backup safeties in there. You have Dane Jackson coming in off the bench. Obviously, your D line is fairly healthy, minus your big defensive tackle. You got a guy off the street in there. You got Greg Rousseau playing hurt. So at some point, that defense played super well, minus one of the most improbable catches of the year again to Cortland Sutton for 3% probability, one of the most improbable catches in the last 5 years. So with that, the defense played really well, but are one of the worst defenses in the final drive of the game. They're 31st in that situation. They're not stopping anybody. You could say they're on the field too much if you'd like. You could say the talent is different. You could say there's a fourth down in some cases, and in a lot of cases when a team's driving. So there's a lot of variables there. But the defense, by and large, has been good. Now, who do you point the too many men on the field to? I would have said just keep your defense out there. They ain't faking it. They're not doing anything crazy because the game would be over. Just stand there. Just stand there. You don't run field goal block anyways, ever. So just stand there and make sure nothing goofy happens, and just watch the kicker run on the field, slip. The holder's using spider tack, trying to hit a field goal because they were struggling in that department with holding the ball. As you saw, he rushed his kick just by virtue of not even the 5 yards of the penalty. He got to calm down like a timeout. That's why I don't think icing the kicker works in general. I think it actually helps a pro kicker, maybe in college, but I think it helps a pro kicker readjust, reline up his kick, reline up his hold spot, and his drop kick as a former kicker myself. So there's so many positives. They don't usually get iced. That's not the position that you ice. So ultimately, when it comes to this, who do you blame that mishap on? And it's general. What does the special teams coordinator do in a football game? That's what they do. They handle coverages. They handle where they want to pooch kick. They do all the communications of subbing. That is their job. How he survived that is crazy, maybe because they just didn't have a special teams replacement. But he should have been out the door, Smiley. period. That's an unacceptable situation, but I don't think one that earns McDermott any clout by firing your special teams coordinator, but that's his job. But at some point, McDermott has to take heat for, I guess, you had one hit in Dable. Frazier was pretty good until they got rid of him. So at some point, he's got to take some heat on these coaching staff hires more than anything, because in the game, that is been practiced. That's on the special teams coach. You know the situation. McDermott just called the timeout. In these cases, the timeouts helped because it moved the ball back and it made them rush on the field. Those are positive coaching decisions. Sometimes the defensive timeouts are very annoying. They annoy me. But in that case, though, it was the right use of the timeouts to keep moving the ball back because Russell Wilson was kneeing on it further back, rushing on a field goal unit. That's great. Everything there is perfect. Seriously, that was almost, if they missed that kick and there wasn't 12 men on the field, that's perfectly executed. Literally, that's great coaching. But the fact that he couldn't get a sub in that situation, and it falls directly on the special teams coach, just like it did in 13 seconds, because it was a squib call that didn't get to the kicker. Everybody else on the coverage team knew the call. So at some point, and the special teams coordinator got fired for it. So at some point, McDermott is culpable for the issues here, just by virtue of his hires, and there's some type of communication breakdown. But for me, that's where it ends when it comes to the Sean McDermott discussion. Maybe Glenn, I have a different perspective, but I just think he runs such a good organization, and there is absolutely worst case scenarios here. Of course, there's better. There is a chance you hit better. The odds, we talk about odds, the odds of that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how good the odds are that you get Ben Johnson or you get your number 1 or 2 target to come in. And maybe you do, and it's great. Maybe you don't, and it ends like Cliff Kingsbury, or it ends like McDaniels, or it ends like any of the other Matt Rule, or any of the other situations of coaches that I've heard how good they would be. So you could get it right. I absolutely could. But are you going to get a guy, because McDermott is between the game 5 and 11 on the coaching rankings, maybe now falling a little bit, 8 to 12. Are you going to get a top 10 coach off the bat? Maybe you can.
Yeah, I think Kevin hit a lot of where I wanted to go to with McDermott as far as like body of work goes in the McDermott era. Obviously, we have some emotion to this. Like 17-year drought was ended through him. Some horrible coaching memories that we have that the Buffalo Bills have hired and fired, and just McDermott was like that structured breath of fresh air for us. But when you talk about structured and his attention to details, we have lost some of the most heartbreaking games in the McDermott era, whether it's because these games just aren't cute anymore to win, they're serious. Kevin, you talked about a few of those in there, not to reiterate on those, but the preparedness in these final drives, or even these last few minutes, and some of the odd timeouts, and some of the things that just sort of irk us a little bit, and not necessarily from a percentage analytics standpoint, but just, the fan perspective of like what is kind of going on here. And it's not, we need to fire McDermott today, but I think, the ones that were sort of conservative towards firing him are very much leaning towards like, this could be it, really, especially if it goes really bad these last 7 games out on the stretch. So he's been, nixing guys under him that, were kind of scapegoatish, but at some point, like, where do we got to go? You had Elway and Schottenheimer, and eventually you had Elway and Shanahan. Do we eventually get something like that? I know that's a small sort of, focus there, but I don't know. We're worried about wasting Josh Allen in this prime, and, hopefully something can get done with him, and just one, right?
Yeah. So I told the guys before this, and anybody that looks at my Twitter knows I have waved the McDermott banner. I'm a huge McDermott fan, both professionally and personally. I think personally he's an unbelievable person. I think most people would probably attest to that. He's a great guy, really, really good person. In terms of his coaching, first off, if you look at the 32 NFL coaches, Sean McDermott, who's been here 7 years, is sixth in the NFL in tenure. If that doesn't tell you how hard it is to find an NFL head coach, I don't know what does. But What I will say is this, and I've gone with this notion a lot. Kevin mentioned this. I think people think it's easy to just, if we fire McDermott, that we'll be able to find somebody else and everything will be just A-okay. And what people I don't think realize is it takes more than just being, because these guys are coming, generally speaking, unless you're going to get a retread head coach, right? If you're going to get a retread head coach, then you might as well keep Sean McDermott. Truthfully, if you're going to get a retread head coach, you might as well just do what you've already done, because at least you have a guy that knows what he's looking for. Otherwise, you're going for, generally speaking, an offensive coordinator or a college coach, right? And at that rate, you have to expect that they can come in and become the CEO of this organization, because that's what they are. They're the CEO of the Buffalo Bills. And one thing that you can say is Sean McDermott is fantastic at doing just that. Does he make bad decisions sometimes? Challenge it. We know Sean McDermott sucks at challenging. I don't think nobody can go against that. Sean McDermott is probably historically one of the worst coaches in terms of challenging in the NFL. But he also does some really, really good stuff. I think the tough part is, and I think where we're kind of in a bad spot, is Sean McDermott's trajectory was like this. It was unbelievable. When he had come here, he had broken the drought. Then they went bad for a year, and then it was upwards, right? 13 seconds happened. It was a tough loss. Heath Farwell, he was the one that was kind of jettisoned out, which, side note, why they kept Matthew Smiley, who was Heath Farwell's protege, makes no sense to me, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Matthew Smiley's been honestly quite atrocious this year in every aspect of his job. Punting's down, field goal kicking. If you look, Tyler Bass has had he's had his worst year as a pro this year. Special teams unit. We had the Jets game. They won the game on a punt return. So much stuff. Aside from that, after 13 seconds was when Sean McDermott ran into, and RJ mentioned this earlier in the comments, the unluckiest part of this team, quite frankly. The Bills have had 2 years where they have just been snake bitten by injuries. Snake bitten. Some of the worst. They have put more people on the field in 2 years than some franchises have done in 4 or 5. The amount of players they've had to run through to try to roster a team is unbelievable. And then on top of that, what they saw last year with all the emotional trauma. And now, mind you, I am not trying to make excuses. What I am trying to say is it's not all one specific path to getting to where you want to be. Just because Sean McDermott hasn't looked good now is not because Sean McDermott's a bad coach. There's reasons behind all this stuff. Now, where we are in the season, what I will say this, and I have said very similar to what Kevin has said, and what Glenn was saying. If the train comes off the tracks and just derails and everything just goes completely catatonic, there's obvious turmoil within the locker room, you're just going to have to bite the bullet and bring somebody else in. And there's going to be options. Ben Johnson is going to be there. Bobby Slowick, who's a very, very hot name right now, is going to be there. Harbaugh apparently wants to come back to the NFL. There are options that are going to be there at Terry Pagula's, disposal. And it's going to be Brandon Beane's first shot of hiring his own head coach. So there is chances that this stuff can happen. I think what you run into is there's a couple parts to this story that are going to make it a little bit harder, right? To really get Sean McDermott out the door, if that is what you want. One, he has the ability to sit there and say, look at my resume. Two, he has the ability of sitting there saying, well, Ken Dorsey was a terrible offensive coordinator. He destroyed my team. I deserve to have a chance. And especially if Joe Brady comes in and lights the world on fire in these last 7 games, you damn well better guess that Joe Brady will be the OC next year, and Sean McDermott will get another chance to run it back. And then the third and final most part of this, he could say, look I lost Matt Milano, Tre'Davious White, Daquan Jones, 3 pretty much all-pro players on this team, and still kept this defense afloat. I think the problem is his own issue. And Timothy, I kind of like what you're saying there. He does got to get out of his own way. Sean McDermott makes a lot of dumb decisions that he's his own worst enemy, quite frankly, because coaching-wise, Sean McDermott as a defensive coordinator is fantastic. What he's been able to do with this gutted roster on defense, you can't give him any type of bad marks on that. What he's been able to do to get through the season, and to even more so get through last season with all the emotional and physical trauma, with all the injuries they went through, with Josh Allen having a UCL injury and still ending up 13-3, that should be lauded. But again, I think the tough part is what Kevin said is, if you want McDermott gone, and I understand and I see the reasons and I agree in most of them, it's going to be tough. The other part about this is, if the Buffalo Sabres are really, really bad this year, which losing Tage Thompson is a big deal. If the Sabres are bad, the last thing Terry Pagula wants to do is a complete teardown of one of his franchises when the other one is having a shit ton of issues. Excuse my language. So I think the tough situation right now is, if you want Sean McDermott out, and I understand that, it's the only way that's going to happen is if everything falls apart on the Buffalo Bills side. I don't see it happening, but I will say this. I love the Bobby Johnson idea. If the Jets get rid of Robert Saleh, I will be the first in line. No, I do not want Robert Saleh as my head coach. Is Bobby Johnson being your head coach and Robert Saleh as your defensive coordinator would be a fantastic 1-2 punch in terms of bringing success to the Buffalo Bills. I don't suspect that's happening. I think likely Sean McDermott, who was, by the way, on the stage when they did the dig for the brand new stadium. Head coaches aren't normally on the stage when they have big monumental moments like that. Sean McDermott is loved by Terry Pagula. I would be very, very surprised if Sean McDermott is gone. Very, very surprised. Aside from that, guys, any last thoughts on the Sean McDermott conversation?
None here, but I think everyone nailed it on the head. But I just, between that, what you just said, and the money factor, and you're not guaranteed to land one, I just don't know that this is the time that he does it. That Terry Pagula with the Sabres, with the stadium, with a couple of other situations, I just do not personally see it when he knows he has a known entity. The better move might be, you're getting an OC, you're getting a DC, you're getting a special teams coordinator, rebooting this thing. And don't forget the loyalty of Bean and McDermott. At some point, yes, Bean will get a chance to hire again if that happens. But he's going to further Terry Pagula's sentiment of let's ride this out. Like, let's redo this. Let me get him some players, some injury luck issues, some ball luck issues. One of these years, as soon as this year coming up, or as soon as this end of the season, they're going to go on a run. And they have proven it. Even when it looked bad last year with the injuries, they went 13-3. So at some point, you're going to run into a stretch where you don't have everybody hurt. Like Denver. Denver's historically healthy. If you look at their WAR per injury replacement, they have a suspension at safety for a couple of games for some terrible headshots. But outside of Greg Dulcich, outside of that, they have no injuries on that roster. And at some point, you're going to rebound by WAR, by every metric ever, when other teams are losing their middle linebacker, their defensive tackle, their cornerback, their safety. Like, at some point, you get back to the mean just by virtue of the thin line of differences between all of this. So I do think that the Bills, as they come back and get healthy, you're going to see a mini run, in my opinion. Is it too little, too late? With the schedule, it might be only 33% odds to make the playoffs. But that 7 seed is still a half of a game out, guys. And if Baltimore wins tonight, it's still sitting at a half of a game. And Houston's going through some of their own stuff with injuries and whatnot, with Denzel Perryman suspension and a couple other things. Like, this fine line thing here, it doesn't take an extraordinary amount to be a team in the playoffs that one of these division winners do not want to see. And that's not even to mention that the Dolphins need to get it done themselves with a decently easy schedule. So I don't know that this is a year that McDermott is let go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even more than that, the one thing I do want to mention, well, 2-part. One, if Sean McDermott, if Joe Brady can get this offense humming, Sean McDermott can coach this defense well enough to keep them in games. And if Joe Brady can score enough points, we've already seen they can beat teams. And we know that this part of the season is where variance happens more than ever, because there's so many injuries. Teams are at the juncture where things are going wrong. There's a lot of issues. I'm telling you, if the Bills can get their offense going, they can get right back into this very quickly. Teams will lose. All the teams that are at the top of the AFC will not stay there. There's fluctuation every year. You see it happen. Just wait. The other part about this, and you mentioned this, Kev, Brandon Beane knows that his job is very much is hinging on how coaching works, right? He can go ahead and get rid of Sean McDermott. But when you go ahead and get rid of Sean McDermott, whoever you bring in, you better damn well know that guy is going to win. Because if you hire a bad coach from there, your window for keeping your job just shrunk by half. And he knows that he very likely, if that coach gets fired in the next round, which is 3 years, he'll be out of a job as well. At least he knows with Sean McDermott, he has continuity. He knows a guy that has has over a 600% winning percentage while here in Buffalo. He has provided Brandon Beane the luxury of knowing they have a winning organization outside of right now. But sideways, they're 500 right now. They're not under 500. They're not a losing franchise right now. So be patient. But let's get into it. That segueing right into the perfect part of this. We have a big game this weekend. This is a big victory. I think they're going to win. This is a big matchup against the New York Jets. Starting right into this, guys, what are your thoughts on going into this matchup against a vaunted Jets defense, a team that, for all intents and purpose, has given Josh Fitz the last couple years? What are your thoughts on this game going in?
Like you said, I think the Jets defense typically gives Josh Allen and the Bills offense some fits, regardless of whether it's Zach Wilson or whoever else playing quarterback. I'm nervous, honestly. I think the Bills do win. It's going to be a tight game, but they just don't seem to play the Jets real well lately. And these divisional games are just sort of tough. They're not easy. And this is a tough game, I think, to fire your offensive coordinator and then say, okay, now go play the Jets defense and show us what you got. But I still think the Bills pull it out, especially because they're at home and they're typically a good home team. And right. Especially this year, other than obviously last week. But they do make me nervous. That's for sure.
I think at some point they play well at home. The Jets don't play well on the road. I'm going to stick with my numbers because until I see these numbers go away, and they very well soon, I'm going to think that the Bills do not have 4 turnovers that cost 19.5 points. I mean, that game very well could have been a 40s to 20s kind of game. And every metric that out there would say that, but that doesn't give you a win. It doesn't amount. That missed field goal gives you a win, but nothing else really does in that situation. And that's why ultimately I know it wouldn't have been pretty, but walking off that with a missed field goal win, well, at some point to weather these storms, that's how you win games. These teams, the Browns seem to always be in these games where a missed field goal happens or 49ers miss a kick. And that's it's a thing. It's football. Like 40-yard kicks in crunch time are not guaranteed, especially when you have holding issues like the Broncos did, in a situation that already took an improbable catch and a pass interference that may or may not the rule should change, and a couple of other situations mixed in that game. I like the blitzes by McDermott. Almost knocked them completely out of field goal range. I like the blitz at the end of the game because you sack them, the game's over. Like, it's over. It's the same thing as going for like why would you blitz at the 45? Because
and he was that close.
Yes, because it's not that hard to get 6 yards. That's why. And if you stand back there in the cover 2 shell that everyone hated in the playoffs, they get 7 or 8 yards pretty easily and kick that field goal that you don't want them to kick anyways. And maybe you have 20 seconds left or something, just the way the game flow went, but you still hit the field goal from there at the same type of probability that you do on a blitz situation that you don't get home. So that's why. And ultimately, just like going for it on 4th and 1 on your own 40 or something to win a game, that's the same idea. You blitz, you get home, it's over. The game is, and you had gotten home, it's over. Like, the game is, you don't have to care about anything else. He just happened to float up an underthrown ball, gets bailed out of a situation that is by rule of foul. However, the defender needs to have rights to a really underthrown ball. I hate that call, and it needs to change no matter who's on offense. That call needs to change. But ultimately, I think they take care of the Jets because the Jets are reeling. They don't have quarterback play. I think McDermott gets it done at home in this situation. You're not going to have the 4 turnovers. You're just not. I just don't believe it. Maybe they'll have 1, 2. I do not believe they're going to have the 4 again. And I think you'll see a different style of offense to one where Josh's back's against the wall, and they're going to get everybody a little bit motivated going into that Eagles game, I think, to where you're playing for nothing at that point. Like everything's on the line. Everyone's expecting you to lose now at 6-5. You sneak that out to a team missing Dallas Goedert, Jacoby Dean, and a couple others, and you never know. So that's where I stand in this situation, to where they're going to start stealing some of these games back because they're that good. That's why I wouldn't want to see them in a 6 or 7 seed either, because no conference winner or division winner is going to want to see the Buffalo Bills and maybe the Cincinnati Bengals either, because they both know that those teams can get this done in a playoff fashion when maybe Houston doesn't have any experience or whoever it may be sitting in the top of their division.
It's a good time to get hot and start a run.
Absolutely.
Milano's in the building, I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Daquan thinks he doesn't know if he'd actually, based on his body, be able to get back. But the fact that the conversation is being had tells you that they're interested in potentially bringing Daquan back if they make it. But speaking on all that, if you guys are loving this content, make sure that you guys are subscribed to the Cover One Pass, and let's hear from Greg Tomsett and Aaron Quinn.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
You just heard it from them. Greg Tomsett and Aaron Quinn. Guys, make sure you guys sign up for Cover One Pass. And also, if you guys like any type of fantasy football, guys, you guys want to join Underdog Fantasy, Cover One is excited to once again partner with the most dynamic name in fantasy football, Underdog Fantasy. If you have one of your home leagues and that one draft each year isn't enough for you, then Underdog Fantasy is your jam. All the fun of drafting your own players, but without the waivers and lineup decisions. Best ball drafts allow you to have all the fun of drafting your team, all the chances to win big with none of the week-to-week hassle. Use promo code COVER1 when signing up to make your first deposit. Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. Yes, that is $100 in free play if you use promo code COVER1. Even better, Underdog's Best Ball Mania 3 contest is going to make 3 players millionaires. That's right, $10 million in total prizes, $2 million to first, $1 million to second, and $1 million bonus to the team with the most regular season points. 3 chances to win $1 million. Sign up now using promo code COVER1 and take your chance at $1 million today with Underdog Fantasy. So, in regards to the big Jets matchup, you know, like you guys have said, I think this is one that's going to be a Bills team that's very much coming off of being really mad. Though, here's the thing. I said that after they lost 4 weeks ago that they were going to be mad and the next week they were going to show up. And then I said after that one that they were going to be really mad and they were going to come out and show up. And then after that one, I also said, you get the point. This is a matchup that the Bills, I think, really truthfully, and I know all jokes aside, I think with Joe Brady, there's actually a stat out there. 27 teams, I think since 1990, have changed their offensive coordinator mid-season between weeks 5 and 11. Of those teams, 63% of them have had positive results after that change. That's a big time number right there. So my assumption based on all of that is that if Joe Brady comes in, is able to make smart play designs, right? He chooses the right play at the right time, which is really just the integral part of this offense, is just making good decisions. If he's able to do that, putting Josh in the right positions at the right moments, this Bills team can get back to humming. This Bills team can get back to going, because truth be told, we've seen it. They've flashed in every single game. That's the most ridiculous part about this Bills team, is every game this Bills offense has flashed, and you're like, oh, here it comes, and then it's gone. It comes down to continuity, consistency, and the ability to have some creativity in your game plan. That is really just something that Dorsey, quite frankly, lacked, but that, Joe Brady has had the ability to see in different teams that he's coached along the way. So I think this is a big opportunity. But the biggest part about this, quite frankly, this is a Bills team that is going to be playing a Jets team that's also dinged up themselves. They have a lot of injuries on their side, so it's going to be a battle of attrition. This is going to be a battle where in Buffalo, it's going to be cold. It's going to be, I believe, in the 30s, maybe even teetering in the 20s. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Leonard Fournette up this week. I think he's probably gotten enough of the playbook at this point to be able to be utilized. I think in totality, this Bills team is close to really breaking it and getting back into being that offense. Nope, Jackie, I don't think it would be. I think this is the perfect week to do so against the Jets team. If you want to get a power run game going, this is the week to do it against a Jets defense that is incredibly tough. Truth be told, I think you saw what Josh's reaction was when Dorsey was fired, realizing that his play in many moments, and not all one thing my brother mentioned is that Josh Allen's stats right up there with CJ Stroud. Josh has a lot of interceptions that are not his fault. A lot of them are off the hands, tipped balls, the Bobby Okereke tipped pass against the Giants. You saw that. The Gabe Davis threw his hands this week. We've seen it all the time. Josh Allen gets a lot of flack for a lot of interceptions that are, quite frankly, out of his control. Some of them are his, some of his own dumb, bad choice, throwing it into a tight window because he thinks he can. But the reality of the situation is, if you look at this team, I think they're that close. I think they're that close to breaking it. It's just going to come down to them breaking through and Josh Allen finally realizing now, after what happened with Dorsey, maybe that's the wake-up call. So, gentlemen, what are your predictions? What are your thoughts about this game going in? How do you think this is going to finish out?
I'm thinking it's you looking for like a score prediction and win. Is that
yeah, let's get into that. It's
going to be like a 27-24 Bills win, in my opinion. That's where where my head is.
I don't think it's far off. I mean, I think that's probably pretty close to what it is. If the Jets don't score 20, they don't win. They don't, just historically don't. And it's very hard for them. They haven't scored a touchdown in many, many quarters now. They've only have 2 in 4 games total. It's going to be very hard without any crazy punt return touchdowns again to do it. I think the Bills will stay modest again on the scoreboard, and they've hovered right in that number. So I think it's another game, and I'm going to go with they're going to allow some field goals to be kicked. But I'm going with 27-13. That's a number that has stuck out to me pretty heavily. And I think the Jets defense, it'll look sloppy, but they're reeling too. Some of the comments out of there, they had just cut Michael Carter, a guy, had talent, but was liked. There was players interviewed over there that said it was a shocker. So they're not feeling great. There definitely is quite literally a do or die game for them. And if not the Bills too. So I do think that this could be the game that kind of puts them away. And I don't know that you need to rush Aaron Rodgers back, but they still might. But ultimately, I don't think they get it done on the road. In MetLife, I'd probably put this as a 3-point game again. But right now, they don't travel particularly well. And all around, beside that Philly game, I really haven't seen much out of this team at all lately. Their defense it's just not going to do enough to win them a game where 4 or 5, they win games 4 or 5 turnovers. And when that happens, great. But ultimately, I'm thinking the Bills are going to finally get a game where they only turn the ball over once total.
Yeah, this is, first off, don't listen to W Fan. Not notoriously for being one of the best radio stations. A lot of their stuff is pretty bad, and Josh Allen's not getting traded to the Giants unless the Bills want to take on some earth-shattering dead cap. Needless to say, the Jets, I believe, have not scored a touchdown in 3 or 4 weeks. So as long as Joe Brady does not absolutely urinate down his leg, I'm fairly confident the Bills should be able to win. The offense that they trot out there in week 1, had Josh not did what he did, they would have won, period. This belief that the Jets are better than the Bills is only just because of the fact that the quarterbacks, for some reason, when they play the Jets, get inside their own heads. Yes, they have a good defense, but this is not the 85 Bears, even though, DJ Reed seems to believe that they are. The Jets are a good team defensively, don't get it twisted, but the Bills are a very, very good team offensively when they can connect the dots. I think it comes down to if Joe Brady can get things back on track, which I truly believe he will, the Bills are going to win by at least 2 scores on Sunday. I think it's going to be that type of matchup. Overall, I think this Bills team is right there. I think they are very, very close to getting things back on track. I could be dead wrong, and this team could absolutely cave and lose every game, and then everybody's going to get their McDermott wishes and dreams of a brand new tomorrow, but I'd be very, very surprised. Overall, I just think it's a matchup the Bills have to win. They know it. Their backs against the wall. This is one of those ones at home, they've been very good at home for a number of years now. I'd be very surprised if the Jets, like Kev said, travel to come in and be successful against a team like the Bills who know there's a sense of urgency now. Overall, final thoughts, guys. What are your any last thoughts about what's going on right now with the Bills, or anything you want to throw out there?
I mean, Thomas, it could get really interesting if they do lose Jets, Eagles into the bye. I mean, it'll probably get more interesting than anyone would have assumed, or than I would have assumed, going off of 4 losses or something like that. I don't know what could happen in a situation where you have a bye to think about being eliminated basically on that Eagles loss. I mean, things get goofy, but however, just as equally could happen is a double win. And then things get interesting the other way. Then you're probably if they beat the Eagles on the road after a back-to-back wins and into a bye, this narrative changes quickly because now you're in the wild card. Like people assume they're losing to the Chiefs and the Eagles. Like that's just assumption. But if they steal 1 or 2 of those, it is changed because they do have a schedule where the Chargers are bad. They need to take care of the Patriots, and they're going into Miami with a chance that game, they'll probably be 1 game back with the tiebreaker in hand, with a chance to be the 4 seed going into the playoffs. That's just as likely as a back-to-back loss here. Maybe the back-to-back loss happens for 4 straight. Never happened under McDermott here. Even Josh Allen is a rookie. So when Josh Allen was the quarterback. So I just don't see it. It is very much in the players' hands right now. If they produce, this thing could get back on track to the 4 through 7 seed just as easily as it could be like talking about his resignation.
Yeah, I see, the fan in me and then the reasonable fan in me. Both of them still think that this team could go 5-2 or 6-1 and, in these last 7 here and make one of the wild card spots and even still be fighting with Miami for the East towards the end there. Because we've seen it happen. We've seen them do this. We all know the bad luck and the bounces and the weird missed opportunities. I think optimistically and still with my feet on the ground that the Bills could pull off a string of wins here and get hot at the right time. Historically, they've done some, albeit the schedule is a lot harder this year, but the last couple years they've gone on late season runs. Even we had 7-6 at one point in 2021. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I am optimistic that they do make a playoff spot.
Yeah, I'm an eternal optimist. I think they're going to win every single week, even if they're completely eliminated from the playoffs. I still think they're there. But you're right, Kev. Man, if they lose the next 2 weeks, watch out. It's gonna be very spicy around here in Western New York, and the McDermott getting fired conversations are going to be very loud, and he knows it. So I think that's the other thing, guys. Don't get it twisted. Sean McDermott knows. Like, when you guys are screaming from the mountaintops about this, he knows. He knows that his job is very much in the crosshairs right now of what's going on. He knows that this is not a good look on his behalf. So when you see him all strung out during these press conferences, it's because he is literally just as stressed as you guys are mad. Because I'm sure a guy like him who has been ultra competitive from his days at William and Mary to being in Philly to, coming here to Buffalo, he's been competitive in every step of the way of his career. I'm just hoping that he, like Andy Reid, can find his way and become a very, very successful, coach if given the chance to let things ride and get further into his career beyond just these 7 years. Needless to say, I appreciate everybody joining us tonight, and I appreciate you guys sticking along with me while I struggled through whatever's going on with this head cold that I'm trying to fight through again. Gentlemen, why don't you tell people where they can find you, any cool factoids, whatever you want. I don't care. You at the floor.
Just remember, as it says in there, Josh Allen's never lost 3 straight games in a row ever. So I like history on that side at all to do this. Knock on wood if you're a superstitious person, but it's never happened. I think he's too good of a quarterback for that.
Just a little stitious.
Okay, that's fine. I'm 0% stitious. So just to notice, like, I think that's a really good statistic to have in your side, as well as I think they get it right with Brady as the coach, offensive coordinator. Find me as always on the Going Deep podcast. I look forward to continuing to deliver content. Always loves going on Thomas's show. It's always a great time to get on Buffalo Late Night.
You can find me at Twitter, Xverse, at Glenn Goodberry, the Goodberry variant, buffaloonthebrain.com was where my artwork is, and some of the branding that I do with my brother with the On the Brain brand stuff, and catch me throwing up my pizza and wing posts and food posts and talking a little junk here and there and kind of getting silly. But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on tonight and getting to talk a little football.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to you'll have to show us the man cave at some point. Yeah. And Kevin, go get drunk and make some trades. Okay, cool. That's from Wayne, apparently.
You got it. I will do that just for you because you're the beneficiary of that.
There you go. Guys, I do appreciate everybody watching tonight on Buffalo Late Night here on the Cover One Sports Network. As always, we do appreciate you guys tuning in, all the support. The chat was awesome. You guys are, wild tonight, as I kind of assumed with everything going on. Keep that up. If you guys have any more questions, put them in there. Anything else, I will check the chat later and I'll jump right in there. But overall, guys, this should be a big time Sunday, big time week. Appreciate everything you guys do. If you want, follow me on Twitter at @ThomasToLoss. You can find me there on X or Twitter, whatever they want to call it nowadays. But as always, thank you again for tuning in. We will see you in 2 weeks because next Thursday is Thanksgiving. I hope all of you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. As always, like I say, be kind to each other. Tell each other you appreciate. Call somebody you love them. Tell them you love them. I will see you guys all in 2 weeks. Let's go, Buffalo.
The Bills make me wanna. The Bills make me wanna. Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. The Bills make me wanna. Buffalo's happy now. We're on the move now. Bills are happy now. The Bills make me wanna. Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, yeah. Let's go, Buffalo. The Bills make me wanna. The Bills make me wanna.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Appreciate you.